All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, let's talk about what happened last night at the debate. So after Elizabeth Warren and her team leaked to CNN an attack smearing Bernie Sanders as sexist, claiming that he told her a woman couldn't be president, even though there are multiple clips out there of him from 30 years ago saying a woman could be president. After all of that, all day long, the Warren camp was saying, we want to de-escalate, trying to play the victim, trying to pretend like they weren't the ones that leaked this to CNN in the first place, even though CNN has now confirmed that they were obviously the ones to leak this in the first place. We come into the debate, and of course, CNN asked Senator Sanders and asked Senator Warren about what happened, except rather than actually trying to find out what was said in that room and what their interpretation of what was said in the room was, they framed it as, Senator Sanders, why did you say a woman can't be president? And Elizabeth Warren, how did you feel when Senator Sanders said a woman couldn't be president? It was ugly, it was unfair, and Sagar's going to talk more in his radar about just how obnoxiously, outrageously unfair these CNN biased moderators truly were. But the really nasty, revealing part of the night came afterwards. Now remember, Elizabeth Warren has claimed for a long time that Bernie Sanders is a close friend and ally. But now that things are coming down to the wire, she decided to level this ugly, vicious identity politics attack on him for her own political game. It's desperate and it's obvious exactly what she's doing. So who's the wronged party here? And yet, after the debate concludes, when Senator Sanders goes to try to do the classy thing and shake her hand, what does she do? She won't even shake his hand. Instead, continuing to lecture him about her perceived slights and perceived wrongs. It's absolutely classless and it's outrageous. But meanwhile, of course, the media, they eat it up. Why? Well, first of all, this was CNN's quote-unquote reporting, which was really he said, she said. There are two people in the room. One person said it happened. One person says it's a lie. That's not a report. That's a dispute at best. But you know, the people who populate these panels, the pundits, the anchors, etc. They love these spats. They love the identity politics play here, the play to the ultra woke, affluent, white liberals who disproportionately make up their viewing audience. So afterwards, of course, they praise her to high heaven. But let's keep in mind, these are the same people who have been wrong about literally everything. Every debate, they say that Bernie Sanders lost. Every debate, they say Joe Biden lost because, yeah, he's not very good at debates. And yet, what has happened in the polls? Those two are leading the way. One of those two will likely be the Democratic nominee. And they got this one wrong again. Look, Elizabeth Warren isn't the first one to try to play the victim card, to try to play the identity politics card in this race, and it has backfired and failed every single time. Because although the pundits love it, although the media eats it up, although there is a very online, ultra-woke base of support for this type of politics, by and large, overwhelmingly, the American people reject it as shallow, hollow, and disingenuous. Because what do they see ultimately? They see a privileged lady up there on the stage trying to claim that she is a victim and transparently stabbing her friend in the back for her own political gain. The American people see through it, and that's why this attack is destined to fail. And Sagar, I really think that ultimately, yeah, she might get a little bump, stealing, honestly, not Bernie supporters, Pete supporters. Meanwhile, she's completely galvanized Bernie's base. They raised way more money than they ever raised before in a debate. They got 100,000 contributions just last night alone. And her glossy halo image of being above the fray, of being the unity candidate, I mean, the mask has just been completely ripped off from her.
And that's what I've been trying to say from the very beginning on the show. I mean, whenever she was beginning to rise and all that, it's that she is a known liar. I mean, she lied about her heritage. She misrepresents her positions constantly. She bows and parrots the talking points of the wokest members of the Democratic coalition because she wants to harness that girl power vote, which is actually just empty rhetoric void of any real class implications. She portrays herself as a real class warrior, and that's not what she is. She's an identity politics warrior and is trying to go out there and alienate as many people as she possibly can. And that's why we've seen through that from the beginning. And when we see what she did with Bernie, I mean, it's like you said, she wants to play this folksy little, like, down home range Oklahoma girl.
Yeah.
She stabbed him right in the, she didn't even stab him in the back, she stabbed him in the chest and looked him in the eyes and said, what are you going to do about it? And then, and she was like, no, actually, you stabbed me. That's the gaslighting, the level of what we see here. And I'll get into this, but this is the thing. They have the media on their side. And I want to say this, which is that Bernie and a lot of the people on the progressive left did themselves no favors, because they set the purity tests of you're not allowed to impugn the character of the people who are accusing you or the people who are saying these BS things. And we watched this all happen largely, since 2014 onwards, in which the media, if somebody calls you a sexist or a racist or whatever, you have no real recourse. Bernie, they would have called him a sexist monster if he said that she was a liar. He was in an impossible position. Yeah. And I know that the people are with him. The people are generally with the right too whenever they get smeared on these things, but it doesn't, Bernie Sanders still has to go home at the end of the day, and he has to watch people on television. Look, they may be powerless realistically in terms of their audience.
Yeah.
But they may not have. But to see somebody on television call you a sexist, have no recourse for that, it's a disgusting thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And you're absolutely right about that. Thankfully, I believe that the American people absolutely see through this nonsense. You know that that's true, because how long have they been spinning this notion of, it's Bernie bros, it's only white men who support him, and yet he has way more women donors than any other candidate. He has way more diverse coalition, certainly than Elizabeth Warren, and rivals Joe Biden in that department. So people aren't buying the BS. And I think she came off, again, I think the mask was ripped off. This identity politics thing, we've seen candidates try this before. Yeah. How did it work out for Kamala Harris? How's Kirsten Gillibrand's campaign going, right? This is not what people want. You are a privileged lady, you are not a victim, and no one feels bad for you that you leaked a private conversation from over a year ago. Not to mention now all her phony, he's my friend and let's just be nice and let's not attack each other, looks completely disingenuous over this year as well.
And I don't understand what Bernie needs to do more on this, because I think at this point, Tard and I know you think that he did well, and I think it will generally be okay. But for someone to besmirch your good name, you don't just take that standing up. And because that's not just an attack on you, that's an attack on your entire movement. It is a weaponization of a Hillary Clinton and these other people's talking point against you. And I think it's disgusting to really just let it float out into the ether. It should be nuked from orbit, because that's what it really deserves.
I think you're right. Yeah. It does deserve that. I think he handled it in the moment as best he could. I agree with you that I think the place for him to go is to go nuclear on the media. Mm-hmm. And you're going to get into this in your radar. The one last note I want to make here is, I was thinking about this morning. Remember the debate when Joe Biden tried to take credit for the CFPB, the crowning achievement of Elizabeth Warren's career? What did she? She just stood there and took it, right? That would have been a moment where if you wanted to strike this righteous blow, truly righteous blow on sexism and mansplaining, and here you are trying to take credit for something I built and conceived of and put into action, that was your moment. And she didn't do that. It's so telling that also she came into her career, came onto the political scene fighting against Joe Biden and his bankruptcy bill. And none of that is at the center of her campaign. She's not making that attack. Instead, she's going nuclear on her friend, smearing him as sexist. And it recalls very much the way that she politically played the endorsement process between Hillary and Bernie and calculated that Hillary was the one to be with, angling for that VP position or that Treasury Secretary position or whatever it was she wanted. And it looks very much like she's playing those same games once again.
Maybe somebody wants the vice presidency under Joe Biden. So
indeed. First, he's got to win the nomination. All right, Sagar, looking forward to your radar. That's next.